Well, there was an extensive master planning phase of the project before we actually got to the design phase of the project. The concepts focused on a couple of things which carried throughout the entire project and are integrated into the actual design. That is the notion of blue zones, basically healthy zones that promote well-being, and more concretely, the idea of a 15-minute neighborhood. Not a new concept, but something that we think is fairly unique in New York City at the scale of Alafia. The Vital Brooklyn Initiative is a really interesting program initiated by New York State with the participation, of course, of the City of New York. And it selected a number of state-owned properties in Brooklyn for future affordable housing development. But it was actually much more than that, because it took a particularly broad view of what housing means. Housing is not just a roof over your head, but it also means the construction of a community. All of the things, essentially, that go into the creation of and maintenance of a healthy urban neighborhood. I think, as everybody's aware by now, environmental conditions have become an essential part of any kind of design or planning process, in that when we looked at storm flooding conditions, sea level rise, we really took a long-term view. And we are evaluating conditions not just today, but the kinds of risks and opportunities that will be present long after the century has ended. We integrated health and healthcare as an essential part of the master planning process. In particular, there is a sizable outpatient health clinic which will be operated by a local hospital provider that is part of the first phase of the project. Another priority was Passive House. One of the extraordinary things about this project is that all of the buildings will be Passive House certified. This is a community that suffers from a number of respiratory-related health issues, and the filtering and insulation of Passive House buildings go a long way towards improving those kinds of conditions.
So as part of the master plan, there was an overarching theme to create buildings that had a holistic, sustainable approach to the design. So phase one includes 3 buildings and a maintenance hub. Each building incorporates both resiliency and stormwater management through bioswales, rain gardens, and retention systems, but we also utilize geothermal and solar panel energy. So in phase one, part of the renewable energies that we're utilizing is geothermal coupled with wastewater technology, which essentially takes wastewater and uses it to heat in certain seasons and then uses the geothermal to cool in other seasons. So it's a really great way to offset if there's any imbalance in the system. So each building is going to have a large solar rooftop array that will generate power for the building. Ideally, in the future, this whole campus will be self-sustaining in terms of electricity. So the solar energy that C1 and C2 is producing is 24,000 kilowatt hours per year, and then the ground source heat pump produces 31,000 kilowatt hours per year. For C3, it's 12,000 kilowatt hours per year for the solar panels, and for the ground source heat pump, it's 5,000 kilowatt hours per year. And that's an estimate, and each of those buildings within the master plan is estimated to be very similar. As part of the Vital Brooklyn Initiative, one of the key components of that is to provide access to healthy food. So one of the major program elements is going to be a large urban farm, as well as a potential Meals on Wheels program. So the maintenance hub here will also serve in the future as a composting center. One of the roles of the maintenance hub is to have each of the residential buildings' trash within the development be brought directly there so that we can better integrate into the city's infrastructure. So that DSNY actually only needs to go to one place to both pick up trash and recycling for all of the residential buildings.
One of the biggest challenges for this project was really the sheer scale of it. I had never worked on a project this large, and that's not just for myself, that's for many of the members of the team. At the end of this year, there's going to be close to 500,000 square feet and close to 600 affordable and supportive units coming online. And Passive House is just another layer in the health and wellness narrative. There's also a clinic component, a social services component. There's going to be retail. That's just part of phase one. And the larger development, by the time it's completed, will also have an urban farm, a jobs training component, public parks integrated. So really filling a lot of the needs of the city. Passive House is definitely a challenge that's an added layer to affordable housing. You really need buy-in from everyone on the team, from consultants to construction. Initially on site, someone I was working with said to me, this is brick, this is block, this is plank. There's no way to make this airtight. You're asking me to build a spaceship. So, we had to work together to overcome those challenges and really get buy-in from the team for everybody to get on the same page. This is going to be one of the largest blower door tests by volume for any passive house building in the US. There's a lot of lessons learned. Mainly openness and communication and keeping an open mind to learn from one another through the process. How it's drawn isn't always how it's going to be built. How it's intended to be constructed isn't necessarily the circumstances that are on the site. So really we have to keep an open mind and be ready to learn from one another. Everybody brings a different expertise to the table and really just building on that. It's really about learning and growing and doing it better each time, improving upon the template to build a better city.